Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Okay, welcome everybody. Here we are with another Sfira transformation program with SAI. I want to make a special thank you to our sponsor for tonight. Tonight is sponsored by Devora Klein in honor of everyone's true and ultimate zivug, shalom, bayis, and good health, and in memory of Meir, Yitzchak ben Feiga. So that is our sponsor for tonight. And we also have a sponsor for our prize. And I want to announce the prize for everybody. We have these gorgeous Negelwasser cups. You'll see it over here. There you go. There you go. You can do a demo. Yay! So mazel tov to everybody that did your reading and your journaling. And our sponsor for the cups is sponsored by Anonymous, and it's for Refuah Shlema for Yosef Simcha Chaim ben Sarachana. So we should have only good and revealed good. And I want to make a personal announcement that today is a very special day in our family's life. We just saw a revealed miracle today, and I want to say Haidel Hashem Kitev Kilam Chazdei. My son had a very, very, very intense broken elbow 2 months ago. It was a very rough experience, a lot of ambulances in several hospitals. And we were not sure how everything was going to turn out. But Baruch Hashem, today we went in and the doctor said that the x-rays are beautiful. He has basically full range of motion. He doesn't even have to do physical therapy. Wow. And he said, as of now, we don't have to ever come back. Hashem. So today was a very big day. Yes, right? Yes. Baruch Hashem. And I also want to share that one of our speakers previously, Beryl Solomon, he spoke about tzedakah and the brachas of tzedakah. And on the ambulance to the hospital, I said, Hashem, I'm going to give my biggest donation of my life. I basically gave half of our bank account. It was the craziest thing. I'm like, my husband's going to wake up, but my son's going to be okay. My husband's going to wake up with like a freak out, but my son's going to be okay. And I really attest that this is tzedakah, and I want to give a bracha to everybody. You should never need to, but if you need to, tzedakah is the way. So yes, and we're so lucky to have Rochie here. I am so overjoyed that she said yes, and I am so excited, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I always love coming here. This is a very special place and always very special people. Is this good?
Yes.
Is this okay? All right. Hopefully there's not too much like noise from the clothing or whatever. Okay. Hi, okay, we have one more person. I forgot your first name. Ruta.
Yes.
Nice to have you here again. You were here last time I was here. Yes. Okay. So it's a pleasure to be here, as always, to be in a place that's called Living Chassidus. How could we go wrong? And it really is. I think this program really is about living Chassidus, like not just talking Chassidus, but living Chassidus, and especially in the month of Iyar, as we go through Sfira Sa'aimer, this process is literally living Chassidus, so we're in the right place right now. So it's very good. So, sometimes we have a topic, for the flyer, but we're going to explore a lot of things. The topic for the flyer we settled on, the process, the being present, or the present within the process, which is a very, very important idea that I really wanted to bring about a little bit, the idea of Sfira Sa'aimer, but how do we do it as women? Like, what's the feminine approach to Sfira Sa'aimer? And we'll touch on a few other ideas. We'll touch on what it is we're accomplishing through Sfira Sa'aimer. What is this time really? And there's like a lot of things lumped together in this time. So I feel like sometimes it gets a little confused, like what's happening in the time of Sfira Sa'aimer. People start thinking that maybe it's like a tragic time. Is it like the 3 weeks? Is it like the 9 days? Maybe it's like Elul. Is it Tshuva? Are we doing Tshuva? Like what is the mood here? What is the process really about? And it's not any of those things. So it's really something very specific to this period of time, which is such a beautiful time. I actually spoke to a group this morning, and one woman in the group said, she started saying, I love Sfira Saimer. I said, I'm so happy to hear that. I feel like a lot of people approach it with a little bit of like fear, like almost like it's Elul or the 9 days, even like this, like it's a difficult time. It's not. It's a beautiful process. So we definitely approaching it from a place of joy rather than trepidation. Sefer Yetzirah, it's spoken about that the world was created, the Eibishter created the world, b'sefer, b'sipur. The world was created with an author, with there's a book, there's a sefer, and there's a sipur, there's the story. And this is sort of like the structure to the creation of the world. And what's beautiful about this idea is all of these words really are from the word samach pei resh, which is the idea of the sfira, right? And we know that the spheres are how the light of the Eibishter comes down into this world through the 10 spheres, the spheres of Meichin, the spheres of Midas and Malchus. This is how we experience the light of Elikus in creation, through creation. This is how the world is created, and this is how it's filtered. The light of Eibishter is filtered through these spheres. So this idea that the sefer, the sipur are all expressions of Sfira. And of course, we know that Sfira is also counting, right? Sfira Sa'aimer, the counting of the Aimer. And finally, Sfira is the word sapir, which I'm sure if anybody's heard anything about Sfira Sa'aimer, this comes up, that the idea that Sfira is from the root of sapir, which is a sapphire. And of course, we know that the luchais actually were made of sapphire. So there's a lot of depth. Hi, welcome. There's a lot of depth to this idea that through the sphira, through the counting, through the escalus of the midas, through this process, we are refining, we are polishing, we are growing. It's a time of longing and yearning to reconnect and to discover our own inner shine, our own inner sparkle, a reflection of what we actually received at Matan Torah. So we're going almost through refining ourselves and polishing ourselves. We're getting back to the sparkle. We're reflecting the original shine of the luchais. And the idea that when we are able to refine ourselves to this point, we become like a mirror. We become a mirror for godliness. We become a reflection. And we know there's a reason we have a picture of the Rebbe in our house, right? And the Rebbe always spoke about it, actually, this idea that after Yud Shvat, the original Yud Shvat, the Rebbe used to tell people that they should have a picture of the Feiga Rebbe in their home, that they should carry it with them. The Rebbe even told one person they should put it in his hat. He should have the picture of the Feiga Rebbe in his hat. So there's the idea that the tzir of the tzaddik, right, is this perfect reflection that for a nightmare. Yeah. Okay. So there's a purity in the photo. It's actually a very special story that happened in my own life that recently happened that really brings out the idea of how the face of a tzaddik, particularly the Rebbe, how even just the tzir can be such a pull and a connection. So as some of you might know, my husband and I are in shluchos in downtown Brooklyn. So not very far from here, but really like a world apart. You come, as soon as I cross over, like maybe Eastern Parkway and like maybe around Nostrand, I start feeling like, oh, okay, I'm home. It's like, it's so close, but it's just a whole other world. And it actually shocks me sometimes, even after 20 something years of shluchos, that it's so close, but you still, and sometimes I'll have experiences that you could have in like Hicktown, Alabama, but I'm like, you're 20 minutes from Crown Heights. How could you? So one such story actually happened recently. So we get Bachram to do Miftzayim on Court Street and Smith Street, like the busy streets near our neighborhood, in our neighborhood. Hi. And recently one of the Bachram called us up after with a great story. He told us that he met a guy on the street. And as is really par for the course in our very liberal, very secular neighborhood. If anybody is familiar with Park Slope and that area, that's like the bubble of secularism. And he encounters a guy, and he's ready for the usual fight. And the guy's putting up a fight, and he says, "No, you really should put on tefillin." He's trying to explain to him, and the guy's like, I really don't have any connection to Judaism. I'm not connected at all. I'm not interested. And he said to him, just, look at it, just take this pamphlet. It'll tell you about it. And he pulls out a pamphlet and has a picture of the Rebbe on it. And the guy stops, he's like trying to get away from this very persistent bacher. And he stops in his tracks. And he says, "Wait, I know that face." He says, "Who's that man?" He says, "Why is he on the brochure?" So he says, "How do you know this is the Lubavitch Rebbe? How do you know this?" He says, "Okay." So he says, "I know that the rabbi lives somewhere in my name, like somewhere a few blocks away from me, but I'm not sure the address." He says, "During COVID, I started taking these walks around the streets of my neighborhood. Like I never used to go on, all these little streets, but I started taking walks. And, in Brownstone, Brooklyn, where we live, like you have it's one house looks exactly like the next, but the windows, like the shutters, you could see into people's main floors if you're not closing your windows all the time." So he says, I'm taking walks, and it's interesting. I see into people's, I see it's just, I try not to stare, but, it's like, this keeps my walks interesting. This is like how I kept myself entertained during COVID. And he says, and one day I'm walking and I pass by a house and the windows are open and I see a picture of this man. And he says, and I was like, I was mesmerized, I'm always like curious, but I try not to stare. But he says, I couldn't help myself. And I actually was staring. And he says, I kept every day when I did my walk, I made sure to pass by that house. He says, I realized that must be the rabbi's house because it's a picture of a rabbi. He says, but I thought maybe it's the rabbi's grandfather. And he says, and there was something about this face that every time I passed by, I had to stop. And I felt a pull. He said, I just felt a pull in my soul. I felt a pull, a connection. And he said, I kept meaning to get the number of the rabbi and find out who this person in the picture is. He says, but now I know. So he says, okay, I'll put on film. So then that was it. He was sold. It was my house. So it's an amazing thing, that just the picture of the Rebbe could have such power. If a person is open, they can recognize. And, people always talk about that, passing by the Rebbe and looking into the Rebbe's eyes and that clarity that they felt, that the Rebbe was such a perfect reflection. He was so übergegeben to the Eibishter, to every single Yid, that his whole seer became this hadras panim that a person could recognize that beauty. And as the Rebbe Shluchim, I'm not just talking about the Rebbe, and this is an important thing. Sometimes when we talk about stories of the Rebbe, like, wow, the Rebbe was so special. But that's not what the Rebbe was here for. And that's not what he wanted us to take away from these things. The Rebbe wanted us to be his shluchim, right? And shliach adam k'maaseh, a person's shliach is them in the moment that they're doing their shlichos. And all of us are, as chassidim, we are shluchim. And the Rebbe wanted this from all of us. It's actually, there's a beautiful story of a bacher many years ago who went on Merkei Shluchos and came back and felt very down about the experience. He felt like he didn't find any Jews. He didn't make it have any effect. He felt like it was a waste of time, and he felt like he didn't do his shlichus. And he wrote to the Rebbe that he felt very bad about the experience, that it was a failure. And the Rebbe actually spoke in Farbrengen after that and told a story that a woman reached out to him and told him that she's reaching out to him because she had no connection with Yiddishkeit since her childhood. And she lives in Hicksville, Alabama. That's going to be our place tonight. And she's sitting in her living room one day, and she sees out her window a person who looks the way her father. And she hadn't seen that since her childhood. And she said it reminded her of her childhood. It reminded her of her connection to Yiddishkeit. She was reaching out to the Rebbe to thank him for sending his shluchim. So just the tzir of a chassid, and even if we think we're not at that point of refinement where, if you hang our picture, someone's going to become a Baal Tshuva. But just the fact that eskeita chassid, right? When a person walks in the street, there's a certain refinement in who we are as chassidim that actually allows the light of kedusha to shine through us. This is what we're trying to accomplish right now in this time. We're trying to achieve this level of clarity. And these days, in Chumash, in the Tanya, if you're keeping up a little bit, there's a recurring theme that's constant between Parshas Kedoshim and Parshas Emor. We're talking about Kedusha, 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 Kedusha. This is what the conversation is. How do we become holy? What does it mean to be holy? And how do we become holy? Parshas Emor, Rashi, actually, the Parsha starts, this week's Parsha, Emor starts with the words Emor, right? You should give this information over. And Rashi says, Emor means lahazir gedolim alaktanim, that this is about educating the next generations. And he uses the word lahazir, which you could say is to warn, right? And he's saying, what are you teaching? How to be kaddish. We're teaching the next generation how to be holy. This is what we have to pass on to the next generation. And the Rebbe has a beautiful sikha on these words, saying lahazir comes from the word zohar, which means to shine. And this is the work of chinuch. This is what we do for the next generation. This is how we bring out the kedusha, by polishing, by shining. We're not shaping. We're not molding. We're taking a perfect, beautiful neshama, and we're just polishing. We're refining. This is our work as mechanchim. Of course, we are, as the women, we are the educators of the future generations. What do? We are polishers. We're refining to bring out the kedusha that's already there. And this is really the idea of the Omer, which is like chinuch. It's like an advancing, of progressing, level by level by level. It's a never-ending process. So if you feel like you were here before, yes, we're going to come here again next year. We need to be here every year. It's a process. And the point is literally that we should shine, that we should come to a place of kedusha. After we say Pirkei Avos in this time also, which is also the same idea, right? Of refining ourselves, that we should be derech eretz kadma l'Torah, that we should be just a mensch. When we get the Torah, we should start off from a baseline of being a decent, ethical human being, and from there we can transcend and become godly. And what do we say after Pirkei Avos? Ratza HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'zakos es Yisrael lefichach kirba lahem Torah mitzvos. We say that after we say the parak. And the word zakos comes from the word zichuch. Chassidus teaches us the zakos is the word zichuch, which is to polish, to refine. The Eibusher wanted to polish us. He wanted to refine us. He wanted to get us to that place that we go back to the sapir. And how do we do this? With this work of this time. This is how we get to that place.
When you said that the luchos were sapphire, could we say that they were stones? They were actual sapphire, and they were
The second luchos were made out of sapphire. Yeah, they were actually made out of carved into sapphire. And after we count, right? Every night after we count Sfira, what do we say? Ve'taher ve'eskadesh b'kedusha shel ma'ala. We should become purified and we should become holy. So what is this? What are we actually trying to do? The Alter Rebbe actually said there's a difference between kedusha and tara. Tara is the process of becoming kadesh. So when we say these words, ve'taher ve'eskadesh, we're purifying ourselves so that we come to a place that we are actually kaddish, that we are holy. And we do that through the process of the spheres, through the process of the siskalos, of working on our midas, perfecting our interactions with others. This is how we achieve a level of kedusha. So what are we doing here? We're really building a relationship. We're building a relationship with ourselves, right? Building a relationship with the Eibusher as we approach Matan Torah. And the most important thing is we're building a relationship with others. And this is how we make ourselves holy. And the idea of kedusha and this is also very relevant in the era of this time of Sfira Sa'aimer, where we talk about, of course, in Parashat Kedoshim last week we say V'ahavta l'reacha kamaycha, right? And this is the whole idea in Sfira Sa'aimer, is that there was this plague with Rabbi Akiva's students. The one who said V'ahavta l'reacha kamaycha is the essence of the whole Torah, and his Talmidim are being killed because of a plague, because they don't have Avas Yisrael. What does that even mean? How do we even understand that? And this idea that this is a beautiful, we say this every day, but sometimes when you say the same tefillas every day, sometimes you forget how gorgeous the words are and what you're saying. Before we say Shema every day, what do we say? We talk about the Malachim, right? And we say, Noisnim ba'ava, Rishus zelazeh, lahaktish liyotzram benachas ruach. That the Malachim, Noisnim ba'ava, Rishus zelazeh, with ava, with love, they give permission, each one to the other, lahaktish liyotzram benachas ruach, to be makadesh their yotzer, their creator, benachas ruach, with pleasantness. And then what do we say? Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. And this is how they achieve the Kedusha. How? Noisnim ba'ava reshus zelazeh. And this is what we say was the issue with Rabbi Akiva's students. Not that they didn't love one another, but Kedusha is about boundaries. Kedusha is about a space. It's about knowing our space and allowing space for the other. What is Kedushin? Kedushin, harei at mekudeshesli, right? What is it? This person is mekudesh to you. This person is yours, but not all yours, right? Not all yours.
Space from Kadesh?
Kedusha is about boundaries. It's about separation. That's where it comes from. When the word separation, it's about creating separations. It's about, but healthy separations, right? Healthy boundaries in a relationship. Kedusha in a relationship is knowing the boundaries where I leave off and where the other person begins, and where our island is and where other people are outside of that island. And this is Kedusha. And it refers to really every single relationship when we can recognize the boundaries and understand where we leave off and the other person begins, and allow space for another. This is actually the idea of being like the creator himself, like being like the Eibishter. The idea to allow for life, where we talk about Tzimtzum and how the Eibishter actually was mitzamtzum his own light to allow for creation to occur. This idea that in order to give life, you have to withhold something. You have to actually be able to contain yourself in your space to allow for others to exist. And this is what we're doing through this work of the Skalas Amidas, is we're refining our midas so that we're not all about giving. We're not all about holding back. We're not all about confidence. We're not all about humility. Everything is blended in a beautiful and healthy way. And this is how we create ourselves to be a holy person who can have holy relationships. And by having holy relationships, we become holy. This is how we become holy. Actually, in Tanya this week, the Alter Rebbe was speaking about this idea that when we say Asher K'tishanu v'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu, right? Every time we do a mitzvah, we're actually being mekadesh. We're entering into a state of kedushin with the Eibishter. We're being mekadesh to the Eibishter. We're entering into a relationship. We're tying ourselves to the Eibishter through the mitzvah that we're doing. So it's actually a kedushin that's happening every time we make a bracha. Every time we do a mitzvah, we're tying ourselves through this mitzvah. We're refining ourselves. We're becoming holier. We're becoming connected. And this is how we shine. We shine through this idea. So this idea of us being shluchim. By the way, I'm open to any, if people want to add something to the discussion or bring in an idea or ask me a question as we're going, this does not have to be a speech. I'm very happy to just take anybody's questions or thoughts as we go. So just feel free to just mix in, and for the recording, I can just repeat your question or thought if you have something, okay? So we spoke about this idea that as Chassidim, we are automatically shluchim, right? We are automatically shluchim of the Rebbe. Really, it's a choice we're making constantly if we want to connect ourselves in this way. The idea of shluchos, it's not like an eved. A servant has to do it because his master told him. A shliach, it's you become part of the mission that has to be done. You're not doing it because somebody sent you. You're doing it because it has to get done. And the idea is that if you're not going to be the shliach, someone else will. That mission is in place. Dir Yisbarach, to make this world into a dir v'tachtonim, that has to happen. That is happening. It started, Basi Lagani, the Rebbe spoke about this, and we're in the process right now. It's happening. The world is moving to a place of Mashiach. The question is, are we going to involve ourselves in the process? Are we going to step up to the plate? And are we going to contribute to this mission? Because that's our choice. If we want to bring this into our lives, or if we don't. And we really have that choice. But in a way, it's not a choice. It is a choice, and it's not. It's like when Mordechai tells Esther Amalka, right? He says, right? If you're gonna resist this mission, if you're gonna turn down the shluchos, you can be assured the Yidden are going to be saved anyways. If they're meant to be saved, they're going to be saved anyways. But you're going to be lost in the story. In other words, not that you have to making a name for yourself, but your participation in that salvation, your participation in the geula that's going to come, you're letting go of that. You're letting go of that. Right? And who knows if it's for this very reason right now that you are where you need to be right now. Really, this idea that at every minute, we don't know, like maybe right now, we're right here because we need to accomplish something. I just heard a story. It was making
not vindictive, but it's okay, great, make me feel guilty. Okay,
no, it's not. It's actually not. It's empowering. It's not vindictive. It's like
but it's do me a favor. I'll ask someone else. Someone else.
No. What he's saying is the Yidden need to be saved. Right. The Yidden are going to be saved. Do you want to be that person who is going to be the one who fulfilled that shluchus to save the Yidden? If it's not you, it'll be someone else. As a matter of fact, that's actually the way you should tell a person to do something. Listen, it doesn't have to be you, but this is actually an opportunity. You have an opportunity now to participate. You have an opportunity. Actually, it is. It's your privilege to be a part of the shluchos. It's actually your privilege. We have a choice to participate in life or to take from life. And this really very much speaks to the idea of shluchos, of kedusha, by the way, because kedusha is about contributing, not taking, being a giver, not a taker. And this is really something I think that's very, what's that?
What do you mean by that?
Because the Eibusher tells us to be Kaddish, Ki Ani Hashem, right? You have to be me. You have to be like me. I am holy, therefore you should be holy. What is the holiness of the Eibusher? The giving of life is what the Eibusher is. This is the Eibusher. The Eibusher is the one who gives life, who creates. So we have a choice. We could be like the Eibusher. We could be creators, or we could be just like sucking out of life and takers. We have a choice at every moment if we're going to create. And it's not just about, it's about every situation. Are we reacting? Are we just reacting? Or are we able to be creators in our own life? Are we able to turn a situation around with our own perception, with our own dedication, or with our own willingness to do something, to put forward and actually create our reality rather than just be victims of circumstance? And that's really to be Kaddish, to be like the Eibusher, is to be a creator. To be a creator is to be a person who contributes. Somebody was talking to me about this the other day, that they did the study that people who go on social media and only observe get very, very depressed. But people who contribute, and who are like whatever, if they're influencers or if they're contributing or putting out content, they actually feel good about the medium. So it's an interesting thing. When you're contributing, when you're part of the story, there you find your fulfillment, you find yourself in that moment. When you're only taking, like JFK said, right? John F. Kennedy said, ask not what you can do for your country, ask what your country could do for you. We tend to start thinking about like, what could people do for us? What could the world do for us? But it's a whole other idea. Like, I am here for a reason. So I just heard a beautiful story that, and I don't know names or anything. It was a guy who had come to Crown Heights for the first time. And he was going through a big dilemma in his life. And, of course, he spoke to some of the Lubavitchers around 770. They said, well, you really should speak to the Rebbe. If you have a problem, he's like, how do I get to the Rebbe? They said, so one person told him, oh, the Rebbe comes out of his house at this time, you can catch him. So what does he know? He doesn't know better. He goes, stands outside the Rebbe's house. And just as the person said, the Rebbe walks out of the house and he walks up to the Rebbe and he says, I have this problem. And he spoke to him and the Rebbe gave him like 5 minutes of his time and really gave him advice and helped him. Meanwhile, there's of course like a gaggle of Bachurim standing around and they're burning. They can't believe this guy has this chutzpah to waylay the Rebbe, like on his way to 770. How can you do this? How the chutzpah, taking the Rebbe's time without permission, without an appointment, and they're like watching horrified. And the minute the Rebbe left, they ran over to this guy and they said, what are you doing? He says, I don't know. I was told that this is what I could do. And he said, how can you have the chutzpah to take it? Do you understand who the Rebbe is? Do you understand how precious his time is? And you didn't even. So the guy felt terrible, of course, and sat down. And this time he wrote the Rebbe a letter, and he apologized. He says, I feel terrible that I took your time and made you stop your order of your day. And the Rebbe wrote him back. He says, the famous words that we know, for 70, 80 years, and the Neshama comes down into this world to do one thing for another person. And the Rebbe says, I don't know, maybe this was the one thing I had to do that my Neshama came down to do. So he says, in that case, I have to thank you. Imagine, what the Rebbe was doing every single day. And this is what he says, maybe this conversation that I had with you is the whole reason my neshama has to be in this world. Can we see ourselves? Is it a question?
No, I just want to add.
Yeah.
And he also made a comment that it's fine. You delayed me a few minutes. Those Bacham were supposed to be doing something
yes,
else.
Yes. I know that part, but it's not relevant to this. But yes, yes.
You know what I mean? It's just like.
No, you shouldn't mix in. The Rebbe was saying they weren't in the right place at the right time. Right, exactly. So that idea that at every moment we have a shluchos, at every moment we could be kaddish, we could be holy, we could be a conduit for the Eibishter's light in this world. And we have that choice at every moment. And through doing this is actually how we become kaddish. This is how we refine ourselves constantly through doing this. Okay.
It's not so far-fetched. It's
not far-fetched at all. It's consciousness.
Yeah. Today in the subway on the way to the doctor.
Yes.
I told my son, I wonder.
Sure. Yeah. Want to say it on the?
Sure.
Yeah.
But, I said, I wonder what's our shluchos today.
Yeah.
Because it's a long ride, and he said, I wonder, maybe it's the doctor. I wonder what we're gonna do. I wonder what's the mitzvah that we're gonna do. Anyway, on the way back, the whole time we're like, okay, what's our mitzvah? What's our mitzvah? And suddenly I hear this couple, and they were really arguing. I happened to be arguing in Spanish, and I know Spanish.
Oh.
And my son was really confused what's going on. And and there was also a little baby there. And he was really worried. And I heard that her, I tried not to listen, but her father was passing away.
Oh, yeah.
And they were arguing about how to deal with it. So I told my son, I was what should we do? They don't look so happy. And I happen to have a bag from Chocolate. And his thing is, once he finishes at the doctor, he always wants a croissant, like his present. So we happen to have an extra croissant.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, maybe this is our mitzvah. I walked over in Spanish. I said, I don't know what's going on, but I just want to make your, like, I hope that you guys are doing well, and I just wanted to give you a croissant. And my son got, like, his face was shiny. He's like, whoa, this was our mitzvah that we were waiting to pay for.
Wow.
And Baruch Hashem, they all came out smiling. So it's just a matter of a mindset.
That's so special. That's so beautiful. That is exactly, that is the mindset, right? And if we're looking for it, we'll always find that we're in the right place at the right time for a purpose, that we are right here, right now. And it's meant to be exactly that, right? There's a sefer, there's a sipur, and we're part of this book. We're part of this story. And why are we in this place right now? And we know why we are. We are because we have to make this world into a dira v'tachtainim, and we have this power. We have this power with little things. Croissant. Croissant. By the way, that would make my day. That would totally make my day. Yeah. Yeah.
My teacher told me that one time my her and her husband were getting off the same exit 3 times, and they're like, "Hey, like this is crazy." 3-4 times they did big chaps, and they stopped. They made a bracha and they continued driving. You're like, we obviously have to, like.
That's great. That's great. Right. That's great. That's excellent. I want to try that when we put in something into the conversation, that it's either a question or something short, because the people who are watching by Zoom, I don't think could hear you. So then they probably are missing this stuff. So even though we're enjoying it. Thank you. So really the whole idea of how we become the tzir of Elikus is through refining our midas. It's not, we don't work on our meichin at this time, right? We're working on the midas, on the emotional midas, because the emotional midas is how we interact with other people, right? Can't love if there's another person to love. Can't give if there's no one to give to. We need another person for this work of perfecting our midas. And this is how we become holy. This is how we become bachentz, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yichuneka. This is how we become blessed by Hashem's light on us, which brings us chen, which makes us a tzir of Elikus. And we become this mirror for Kedusha. So there's this idea that I really wanted to talk about, is also, this is idea of what we're doing in Sfira, how we're working towards refining ourselves, becoming this sapir, becoming this clear reflection, becoming again a reflection of the Sarasa Dibros, of the Luchais, of the very beginning of Matan Torah. But it's interesting, like, how does this actually relate to us as women, particular, especially Sfira Saimer? And actually, I don't know if everyone is aware, but there's actually a lot of arguments about Sfira Saimer and women. If actually women are supposed to count Sfira Saimer. So of course, so what's that? Sfardim are not into it because the Zohar actually says that women shouldn't. So there are a lot of opinions, and there's an argument if it's a mitzvah shazman grama. The Ramban talks about, is it a mitzvah shazman grama? Should women actually be obligated or not? Because this is, there's a particular time you have to count at night. You can only say the bracha at night, right? So, and then of course the Zohar speaks about the idea that counting in general is dinim, right? It's Devora, and women are Devora. Women represent din, so it's not a good mix. And then even on the other end, yes. Men are chesed, women are Devora. But this is another conversation. Okay, Devora is very powerful. Yes. But today, as it turns out, most women do count the Eimer. This is like actually very common that women do this. So by the way, if you don't do it, you could say, it's fine, the Zohar says. So don't feel bad about that. But lately, like, women are counting Eimer. So it's actually an interesting phenomenon that somehow we're connecting to this. We have washing machines, exactly. We have a little more time, maybe. I think I got what you were saying. Maybe I missed it.
You're saying that washing machine, they have time.
No, like we have time.
Oh, time. That's what I thought you were saying. We're washing machines. Exactly. Things happen by themselves a lot more. Right. Right, exactly. We have a lot more freedom and time. And this idea of the women counting also, I think, is very related to us being in more of a geula mentality already. The time when nekeva to seviv gever, this idea of the feminine energy rising, and that's really the coming of Mashiach. And the idea, the Rebbe always spoke about that the women are the ones who are bringing Mashiach. It's not just like a nicety. It really is about, and you can see it's happening in the world. If you see what's going on in the world, the way the feminine energy has been coming to the forefront, we're going through a process. We're going through a process of going towards Mashiach here. And this is part of the process, is women figuring out their own power. And it's, you know, it's been a process since feminism, right? The women thinking first that they had to be men to have power. And now the conversation's actually changing, and it's fascinating because I feel like as Jewish women, we always understood, and especially as Chassidim of the Rebbe, who was the ultimate feminist, you know, he made Chassidim from women. And I think we always kind of understood our power as women, not having to be anything else. But the world is sort of coming around and starting to say, wait, we know we can do what the men do. And we can do it in heels, and we can do it backwards, holding a baby. But do we want to? Is this really our best use of our power? Is this really how we want to live our lives? Like, we actually can be powerful as women. We don't have to wear a pantsuit and go to an office to be powerful. There are ways, and there are feminine ways, and our power is innate. So we're starting to embrace that power. And I think part of this idea of women counting Sfira and so many things that we're doing these days that women never did is really us coming into ourselves. But we don't have to do it the same way. We can approach it from a feminine perspective. And that's the interesting thing, because the truth is that the idea of striving towards a goal, right? This idea of struggling and striving and goal-oriented, and that's actually a very male construct. That's a very male energy thing. And then you have the female energy, which is Malchus. And Malchus is still. Malchus is stillness. It's presence. It's Shabbos, right? It's Shabbos. And Shabbos, you have Tchum Shabbos. You don't go anywhere on Shabbos. You're not supposed to go anywhere, right? You're not supposed to do anything, create anything, change anything. Everything is perfect as is. It's stillness in the presence. So this idea that you can approach this process as like a struggle, or as a woman, we can approach it from a place of presence, of malchus. And it's really not just Sfira Sa'omer, but everything in life, how we approach what is the feminine approach of being able to be completely present. You know, we say, Shabbos, right? We're told, by the way, Hayom Yom of today, the Alter Rebbe is talking about the Magid said, which is perfect for this conversation, that the Magid of Mezrich said, Usfartem lachem, is that you should make yourselves, you should polish yourselves to be a sapir. You should make yourselves into a sapir. And the Alter Rebbe continued that how do we do this? How do we make ourselves, how do we create ourselves as a sapir? And he says, through Sheva Shabbos Tmimais, the 7 midas that we work on through the 7 weeks, each one becomes like a perfect Shabbos. And then what is the idea of Shabbos? Shabbos is perfection. Everything, all your work is done. Everything is perfect exactly as it is. Nothing has to change. It's perfected. That moment of Me'ein Olam Haba, that we go back into that place of Gan Eden, of Eitz HaChaim, of perfect unity, of perfect oneness. That's Shabbos. So what's happening? You're going through the 7 days, and each midah becomes in its state of perfection. It becomes a Shabbos Tamima, it becomes a perfect Shabbos. And at the end of the 7 weeks, your midas are shining And that is how you become a saper, svartam mochem. So it's a beautiful thing from today's Hayom Yom, actually. Couldn't be more perfect.
Here's what you said about how it's either this or that. Like you said, either you could approach it like this or you could approach it with malchus.
Right. So we're going to talk about that. What does it mean to, either you can approach it as a struggle. Like, I'm struggling. It's like in the place, you could talk about this in another way. You can talk about this, that there's two perspectives in the world. The big argument, how can we say that there's free choice? How can we say there's such a thing as bechira if the Eibusher knows everything, right? Did you ever have this conversation as kids? That how does it make sense? So the Rambam has this conversation. How do we say that there's free choice? How do we reconcile that with the idea that the Eibusher knows everything, right? So
he knows the outcome, but
what's
going to happen? It's our choice.
So it's even more than
what we're going to choose.
But if he knows what we're going to choose, is it really a choice?
Yes, because we're humans and we're
okay. So this is the conversation.
Because we don't.
But there's actually right.
I mean, I don't.
Right. So in a space of bechira, you're actually making a choice. But there is a higher plane, which is the space of the yediyah, right? And the Eibusher is beyond time. Time is a construct. It's a creation. Bereshis bara Elokim, and time is created. There's day, there's night, there's weeks, there's months, there's time. It's a construct. In this realm of Yediyah, the Eibusher's realm of insight, past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. So in this very moment in time, we're already in that perfected state. We're already in that state where everything, that we already got there. And really, this is the process from Pesach to Shavuos. This is the process. We're coming from Pesach. What's happening? What happens on Pesach? Through the Seder, we're gifted with an inkling, a glimpse of our godless. There is we transcend time, and there's a gift that we get at the Seder. And the gift that we get at the Seder is a glimpse into our perfected self. And I'm not saying our potential. See, because when I say our potential, you see I could possibly become that. I might not reach that. Everyone's like, you're not reaching your potential. And you think, will I ever reach my potential? But there's this moment where we actually we can perceive ourselves in our perfected state already. It exists. And the truth is, in this realm of Yediyah, in this realm of beyond time, beyond space, our neshama has gone through all its gilgulim. It's gone through everything it has to go through. The world has gone through everything it has to go through. And we know what is the eventual state of the world. What is the eventual state of all of our neshamas? It's a state of pure tikkun, of pure perfection, right? That's where we're heading. And there's two ways of seeing it. You could see, we're doing so well. I was just talking the other day to I give a Pirkei Avos shiur on Shabbos, and a woman told me she has to talk to me about something that was really eating at her after. So we sat down, and she tells me that her whole life she struggled with weight, with diet culture. She was always 5 pounds up, 10 pounds down, it was one diet after the next. So much brain space was taken up with this, she couldn't. And finally, she took herself to a nutritionist who does the whole intuitive eating, and she started changing her whole perspective. She started learning about the idea of honoring her hunger and not being in a war with food, and really appreciating and being mindful. And she changed, and she said she's been doing so well. She's struggling, but she said suddenly, she says, I think I did so much, but then she says, I'm in the gym yesterday, she tells me, and I see myself in the mirror, and I can't believe that there's fat there. And then she's says, I'm comparing myself to this person in the gym, this one's skinnier, and this one. And she said to me, she says, I went home and I cried. She said, I thought I got somewhere, and I feel it's 10 steps forward, 20 steps back. How could I still be in this place after so much work? 3 years I'm dealing with this, I'm working on this and struggling, and I'm back. And it was so perfect because I was thinking about this before, and my husband had given a whole class on this idea. And I said, this is mamish exactly what we're talking about here. I said 3 years ago, like compare yourself in general, in your attitude towards food, towards your eating, towards your body today versus 3 years ago, before you started this process. Are you in the same place? She says, not at all. I'm like much healthier than I was then. So, okay, so you're on the up, right? You're on the up. The movement is up. So when you have a moment, there's bechira at every moment. And sometimes we choose wrong. So there's a dip. Let's say if it's a graph, if you're just looking at this little piece of the graph, zooming in, you're just going to see down. But if you zoom out and you look at the whole picture, you're going to see that the graph is always going up. And the dips are little setbacks in the general arch towards your perfect state. And really, this is the idea that on some level, beyond time, beyond space, we are already in a space of Mashiach. And this is the idea. The Rebbe tells us, open your eyes. Mashiach is already here, right? The story of Mendel of Vitebsk, where there's some Mashiach that went up on the mountain and started blowing the shofar, and everybody was screaming, Mashiach is here, right? And they went to his study where he was learning, and they told him Mashiach is here, and everyone's familiar with the story. It's a very common story, but it's beautiful. And he opened his window, and he sniffed the air outside, and he says, no, Mashiach isn't here. So there's a lot of discussion. What does this mean? Like, why did he have to open the window? And they said, because in his world, Mashiach was actually there. In his space, in his Dalet Amos, Mashiach was there. He was living in a state of Mashiach. He realized the outside world wasn't there yet. But there's to understand that it's not this impossible construct. Somebody in the class this morning actually said something beautiful. She said, I think I know exactly what you mean. She said, when I go to Rabbi Taub or Shea Taub's parenting class, she says, when I'm in the classroom, I'm listening to him, I'm like, mamish that parent. I'm like, I feel it in me. I'm that amazing person. I'm that amazing parent. I feel that I have that. She says, and then I go home and the kids start clutching. But she says, but in that moment, I sense it. I sense not the potential that I could be that, but that I am that. You feel yourself like, yeah, I am an amazing, perfect parent. And then you have to go through a process to actually become that in real time, on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. But getting that glimpse that we get at this stage, that glimpse of who we truly are in our perfected state, our real godless. I mean, we're in a Neshama, right? We're Ein Sof. We're at our essence. We're the holiest possible being. We're connected to the Eibishter. We couldn't be higher. So if there's smallness happening in our lives, it's a momentary setback. We're existing in the level of Bechira. But when we zoom out and we see the possibility of who we actually are, then we have to go through the Sfira. Then we have to go through the process of bringing it down into real time, of making it actually something that is embodied within us. Not just an idea, not just a glimpse, a moment of inspiration, but something that we can actually live out every single moment. And that takes work. That's a process. So what do I mean when I say being present in the process? It's you could see it as a struggle. Like, I'm trying so hard to be a better person. I'm trying so hard and I'm struggling. Or you could say I am right now in this moment, that all of time exists in this moment, in this perfect present. I exist as a perfected human being. So I'm on a path, I'm on a journey. And maybe there'll be setbacks, but it's almost like you don't have to swim against the current. You can swim with the current and let it take you. There's a current that's leading us. We have to believe that the whole world is working towards a state of Mashiach. We can be in that flow. We can be in that place where we're not struggling, we're allowing it to happen through us.
It's a little contradictory because first we're saying that
okay, someone's saying it's contradictory, perfect, so we're going to see how. Yeah,
right? We are perfect, but it's like we're not perfect. We have the potential to be.
We are perfect when you zoom out and you see the end of time. When you see all of time, past, present, and future existing at the same time, you understand how all of this.
You pause time, you zoom out, and you say, okay, this is what it could be.
Right.
Zoom in and
Right. There's a beautiful sikha of the Rebbe in Lech Lecha, right? That the Eibusher tells Avram Avinu, Lech Lecha ma'artzecha, and he's giving him a shlichus. You're going to Eretz Yisrael. You're making aliyah here. You're going on this journey to Eretz Yisrael. And what happens right after that? Avram ends up in Mitzrayim. What is that Yerida? Like, what is this? Like he was on this mission, and we know eventually they get to Eretz Yisrael. So it's not just that it's a Yerida Tzarech Aliyah. The Yerida was like, if you zoom out and you see the whole journey, yeah, it was a Yerida Tzarech Aliyah in the process because you were going up. The mission was happening. So it was a momentary Yerida to go even higher, but it wasn't going backwards. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. It was Yerida Tzarech Aliyah, right? He came out enriched. So it's really that idea that and we can also look in our lives and see that. Like there's a whole story and everything that's happening is part of the story where eventually Mashiach is here. So then everything that's happening in this story is part of that process. And that Yerida is part of what we need to get us, to propel us. Like that person who was struggling in the gym that day and went back to feeling all those old feelings, maybe that was like the propulsion she needed to take her growth a step further. Maybe she was getting complacent, feeling like, oh, I got this. And that's a very important thing in this process of Sfira Sa'imar, in the perfection of our midas and becoming a holy person. And this is really actually the Sfira that we counted. Well, today's Sfira was Netzach Shebenetzach, and tonight is going to be Hayt Shebenetzach. So it's really this idea of we're working towards something, ambition, right? Netzach is like a working towards a goal. And how do we do it? We need confidence. We need Netzach to get to where we need the belief in ourselves. We need that belief that we are at our essence able to accomplish this, and we have it within ourselves. We need that. And we also need the Hayd. We need that humility. We need the awareness that we're part of something bigger, that we're part of a larger process, that we shouldn't get on our high horse when we get somewhere, because we're always moving forward. We're always, and I actually, there's a woman that I'm close to that's really been going on an amazing journey. I'm always blown away when somebody goes from being like secular and being raised secular and starts learning and starts growing and becomes, it's always, to me, I'm like amazed. It's like really watching, and she's going through this process, and she's like, she was in the world of finance, like really deep in Wall Street and like in a man's world, very, very much, very aggressive world. And a lot of like, it's very dirty, that world, finance. There's a lot of like knots, and it's very magusham, and as she's going through this journey, and she calls her, whoa, my mind is blown. Whoa, she's learning business. She's going crazy. And that she starts telling me, she's like, I don't understand. What's wrong with these people? I'm looking at all the people around me. Are they just like, what's wrong with them? How could I, she was in a relationship with somebody. She does not, she could be in a relationship with them because they don't get it. They just don't see it. And I said, this is like sometimes in our process, and we suddenly start thinking, whoa, look how well I'm doing, but it always comes down to how we relate to other people. And if we're really trying to bring ourselves to a place of Kedusha, it's always about how we see another person, how we interact with another person. And if we feel ourselves to be getting to that place of like, oh, wow, I've done good work here, then we need to take a step back and say, okay, but how am I with the people around me? How am I with the people who haven't done the work? Am I able to have compassion? Am I able to see their light? Am I able to interact with them in a positive, healthy way? Then I know I'm doing well, because Yiddishkeit is not about sitting on top of a mountaintop. That's not Kedusha. Kedusha is actually getting married, is actually having a family, is actually interacting, teaching, learning, being with people, interacting with people. This is how we become Kaddish. This is Kohen Gadol couldn't serve if he wasn't married. You can't become holy. And speaking about the Kohen Gadol and this idea of presence, the Kohen Gadol, we just said this actually in the Parsha. We were talking about the idea that the Kohen Gadol doesn't leave the Azara no matter what. Like even if there's a tragedy, even if something happens, he stayed because he was exactly where he needed to be. And that really speaks to the idea of this feminine idea of malchus, of presence, of us, how we see ourselves. Do we need to be thinking of our long-term goals and thinking how we're going to accomplish and to-do lists and feeling productive, or can we simply be? And each one of us really is a kohen. It's a kohen gadol of our own mishkan, and we're creating a space for holiness, for the Shekhinah. And as the kohen of our space, we just need to be present in that space. We have to be the malchus. We have to be the keli to receive the Shekhinah, to be a place where the Shekhinah is comfortable. And that's really as a woman, that's like the mind shift. It's not so much we have to get somewhere, we have to be. We have to simply be. That's our power. Yes, exactly. That is really our power. Our power comes from our presence, from actually being. And the idea that the people around us don't need us to accomplish something for them to be nurtured, for them to be loved, for them to feel good about themselves. They just need us to be us. They need us to be in the moment, present, focused, the fullness of the moment. The moment doesn't exclude everything else. When people say, but being for the moment, so how do you live for the moment? Does that mean you don't think about tomorrow? No, the moment right now includes all of time, includes everything. You're just present to everything that's going on and how it's part of the bigger picture. And you are exactly where you need to be right now. And by being present and focused, this is how we become holy.
It's like minus anxiety.
Yes, minus anxiety. Exactly.
You want to see what's happening around you.
Exactly. Really to see. And you have to sometimes go still for that, You have to not go anywhere. I felt like in COVID, that was like a huge epiphany that I had. And it wasn't a huge epiphany. It was just this deep realization, wow, my kids are not little anymore. And this one's off here and this one's off there. And, you start thinking oh, I could be all over the place. They don't need me to be changing their diaper and making sure they ate breakfast, lunch, and supper anymore. But then I realized that there was something so deeply comforting for them during COVID. They knew I was always in the kitchen. There was nowhere else. And they knew where to find me. They just knew. Someone just told me that she actually asked Manis Friedman how did you become who you are? What did you, who was your mother? What did she do? And he said she was in the right place at the right time. And that's the idea. She was just present. It doesn't mean you can't ever leave the house. No, that's not what I'm saying. We're not we're not putting a ball and chain and you're stuck. Just people know where to find you. Do you know what I mean? They know where to find you. They know there's a spot that you're present, that you're available.
Our mothers are like a secure
right
for us.
It's like our homing signal,
We're
right?
From them, we're nourished from them as
that's right.
children.
That's right.
Essentially, we look at it as our sustenance.
Yes.
So when we know the mother's in the kitchen.
That's beautiful. Yes. It's all working together. There's food and there's a mother.
It's that comfort.
Yeah, exactly.
My mother is available. She's here.
Right. Exactly. And that's safety level. That's really, Al titesh Torah simecha. What is the Torah of the Ima? The Torah of the Ima is Amunah. It's that safety net. It's that foundation of trust. And from that, when a person doesn't trust, they can't learn anything. A person who doesn't trust, who doesn't, or even just basic emotional healthiness is not healthy emotionally. They have a hard time taking in new information. They have a hard time growing intellectually. And unfortunately, they have studies of these babies who weren't given what they were, needed in the beginning of life. They weren't nurtured. And They said a lot of them have learning disabilities, have a hard time taking in information because these emotional circuits, these neurons that are fired, actually create this net from which we can then get a musar avicha. But without that teres imecha, you're not going to be able to absorb. And really, this is what's happening in Sfira. We're building our emotional keli. We're building our vessels so that when we do come to Matan Torah, so that when we do come to that place that we receive this amazing gift of this divine wisdom, it will actually transform us. We're going to be able to absorb it. It's going to change us. It's not just going to be information that bounces off. There's not going to be any cognitive dissonance where we know something, but we behave a different way, right? And that's so common. We can know so much and still act completely opposite to what we know. Why? Because that information hasn't become embodied. We haven't been able to absorb it fully. And what we're doing now really is creating this perfect keli, this balanced, healthy keli. And this is the idea of health also, because health is all about, and ER is the month of Ani Hashem Refecha. It's a month of healing. It's the idea of creating this healthy, balanced keli. And in that, we can then transform. They can then become divine. We can become transcendent. We can go way past our kelim. But first, we need that base. And that's what we're building now. We're building that. We're becoming kadosh. We're becoming holy. We're purifying ourselves. And as we end off every night in Sfira, that this work that we're doing on this particular midah, midah by midah, through this, we're going to affect shefa rav b'chol ha'elamais. There's going to be tremendous shefa that comes down into this world through our own personal work of our midas, working with another person and making ourselves holy. So this is really, it might feel like individual work, but really we're doing something that's part of the fabric of the world, moving towards a state of Mashiach, internally, cosmically, and we should really, this year by Shavuos, we should really receive the Torah with Mashiach.
Amen.
And now, let's, open it up for anyone to ask any questions or any thoughts or disagreements or.
I just want to highlight something really beautiful that I'm living with from what you said. That when there's haughtiness, we don't turn away from the purity that is. We turn outward, and that's what gives us humility. So I feel like a lot of people deal with I'm getting too high up. You turn it inward and say, oh, I'm actually not good. I'm actually not perfect. I'm actually not
right.
As opposed to what you said, which is incredible. You turn outward and say, how am I treating everybody else outside of me?
Right.
So
and change the focus. Exactly. Change the focus. Say maybe sometimes self-work could become about self. So how do we know if we're becoming obsessed with ourselves through this work? Are we just think that's what we're working on midas? We're not working on meichin. Meichin is the self. Midas is outward. Midas is how we interact with other people. And this is how we prepare for Matan Torah. This is how we are purifying ourselves. This is how we are going to shine. We're going to shine through the way we interact, through our holy interactions and relationships. This is how we're going to Sfartem Lachem. So thank you for having me.